gotta adjust something here before we get started. Okay, I need a minute. Eeks! It's one of those days. Too many things going on. Too much work. Let's see. Oops. I'm adjusting one more camera here because we're going to need another camera today. Let's see. Can we see that? No, we can't see that. Okay. We're getting there. We're getting there. It's UFO Wednesday, and I really want to get this right today. It's one of those things. Okay. There we are. Ooh, sorry, I'm just adjusting one more camera here. Okay, maybe there. All right, hi. I hope you guys are doing well out there. It is Wednesday, October 27th. It's week 84, and today is UFO Wednesday. What we do on UFO Wednesday is viewers have been sending me their unfinished objects to finish up for one reason or another, and it was to my delight that I got another one last night in the mail. Yay! Yay me! But we are working on Amy's project, to which we started a couple weeks ago. By the way, we're simulcasting today, should be simulcasting today on 4 channels: YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, my personal Facebook, and on Q Talk. So a couple weeks ago, I did a test run on what will be Amy's final project. I did it on copper just because I was a little bit freaked out about getting this done correctly. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a wide band using decorative gallery wire as the decorative wire on this instead of using it to set a stone. And I wanted to make sure that I understood how we were going to make this into a very seamless joint. And you know, it's funny because this is someone else's material, it's sort of freaking me out that I want to make sure I get this correct. And that's why I went ahead a couple weeks ago and I made it in the copper first. So as I'm thinking about this, I'm like, do I really know what size I'm supposed to make this? I don't know. So I'm gonna double check and go back on her note to me here. Give me just a second. I'm gonna double check on her size. Just because I can and should. You know what they say about measuring twice and cutting once? Well, I'm checking twice and cutting once. So let's see, go back on some messages. And so Amy, if you're watching, hello out there. Let's see, almost 7.5. Okay, that's what I thought. All right, so we're gonna make a wide band. And we're starting with a silver base. And one of the things what makes me sort of nervous about it is because it's a lot of material and I don't want to waste anyone's material. Not that I can't go replacing it. It's just a thing. You know, if you know me, you know that I really, I really don't like wasting. So first things first, let's go ahead and make this band. And what I have here is a stepped ring mandrel that is, it's stepped so that it's easier to make a wide band instead of making it on a tapered ring mandrel if you don't have one, instead of making it on a tapered ring mandrel. Because if you make it on a tapered ring mandrel, then you sort of end up with sort of a cone shape, and you have to be really, really careful to work your metal so that it is more more cylindrical than it is conical. So by having a step mandrel, you can guarantee that it is cylindrical. That said, we're getting inventory in stepped ring mandrels this week. Yay! It's only been 8 months since we've been waiting for them, and this was a perfect timing to have this project done. So the link is posted in the details if you're interested. We have whole and half sizes. So just to let you know, when you're buying stepped ring mandrels, you have to buy them in whole and half sizes. They don't go from 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5. It's all half sizes or all whole sizes. So this one happens to be a half size. Lucky Amy, lucky me, because I did have a set of 2 until my whole size walked away during a show. So that said, she's a half size. Woohoo! All right, so I'm just going to put it right on the 7.5. Actually, I'm going to put it on the 6.5. I'm going to start there. And I'm going to put it on my forming block. And with my leather mallet, I'm just going to bend this around. Actually, you know what? It's going to be easier just to bend it with my hands. So we'll just bend it like so. Bend it all the way around. Try to keep this straight. There we go. All right. And I always start small because it's so springy that it's going to come right back up to that size anyway. And I'm just going to bend it over like so. And I'm just going to hold it with my hands like this, and I'm going to mark it. This is a very springy piece of metal. I could have annealed it. I guess I should have annealed it, but we're already here. So I'm just going to do it this way, and I'm going to mark it. Typically, I like to eyeball, but on a wider band, I have a tendency to mark. It's a little bit better for me, but it's up to you. You want to see what you can do about making a really straight cut. I think I'm going to go ahead and opt for a side cutter instead of a pair of shears. I am going to assume that this is 24 gauge if anyone's wondering. And I'm going to just cut it straight across. Lucky me, this one is just wide enough. All right, so we'll cut that there. And now I'm going to go ahead and anneal it so that I can bend it around the mandrel and make sure that it is a perfect size. So if you're new to the process, annealing is the process of just heating up your metal to open up those molecules to make your metal a little bit more malleable, okay? So why are we behind today? Behind because I've been working really hard this week to settle the 2020 schedule. I know, it's like October and I don't have my schedule figured out for 2022. Totally wackadoo. If you know me from previous years, I usually have my schedule out by a year and a half in advance. But we all know there's this thing called the pandemic that has been keeping me from doing what I normally do. So anyway, I'm excited to be planning for 2022 with real plans and real dates, and those are all going to get announced very soon here. There's several events that will be coming up in 2022 that I'm waiting to get confirmation on, but everybody seems to be falling in line, so yay! You can check the QFOM Gray website if you want to keep up with the dates. All right, so this is bending over nicely, but you can see there's a slight overlap, so I'm going to go ahead and trim that. So the question, there's a question that came in, would it work to solder on the gallery wire and then solder on, and then make the ring? So that was 2 weeks ago. That was a discussion. I'll go back and address that again in a second here. So the thing is, for me, you're going to have to figure out how you do your work, right? Everybody sort of does their work a little bit differently. But for me, that was the big question, was if I was to solder this down flat and this one, then how do I ensure that I can get the seam together perfectly? I couldn't. And I felt that I could make the gallery wire come together more seamlessly by doing it separately and then soldering it onto the base. So that's what I'm doing now. Is I'm making the base first, and then I'm going to solder the gallery wire onto that. Again, just sort of a difference of approach. If you can make it work the other way, but it's also a question of how important is it to you that that seam comes together perfectly. Okay, so I'm still have a bit of an overlap. I am slowly trimming this down because I don't want to screw this up. So it's really up to you how you do your work and what makes sense to you here. But I don't think that there's a steadfast rule as to which way you should go with this. All right, there we are. Again, just sort of taking my time. And I'm cutting this, making sure that I'm straight. No guarantees, but we can try, right? And I'm just taking a little bit off at a time because I don't want to screw it up. Wah! I know. I'm being a freak. Complete freak about it. This is why I don't do repairs. It freaks me out. And if I make this slightly too small, that's okay too. I can stretch it out, but I'd rather it be perfect. So close. So close. See, I want to make sure this is straight also. Okay. And when you're cutting, you want to make sure that the flat side of your cutter is to the side that you are saving. That makes it a much more flush cut. One slither at a time. That's what we're doing. I love my stepped mandrels for these wide rings. They're really great. Okay. So you can tell I've had this one for a while. And again, I'm pushing it together, making sure that it's nice and even. Still slightly off. So I'm going to cut this again. Okay, and I'm going to file this just a little bit. Just to get those burrs off. And notice I'm filing at a very, very slight angle to the inside. There we are. And I just want a really nice flat surface. I'm going to go ahead and hit the other side because I don't know who cut the other side. All right. So now we'll just bring it together, like so. Triple check, quadruple check. How many times have I checked? A lot. Okay, that's perfect size. All right, so here you can see I have a little bit of a pitch of a V there. I'm going to go ahead and put it on my parallel pliers right into the seam and squeeze. That way I can make sure that the ends come together nicely. I want to feel over the top and make sure that it is nice and even, and on the sides, and make sure that's nice and even. So it's slightly off, just a hair. Okay. Yep, still a hair. You can always sand that down, but why when you can just fix it so easily like so? You know, I should probably pickle this. So I'll throw it in the pickle so you can see what's going on. Okay. It's amazing how quickly the tools accumulate over here. Let me put some away while I pickle. So I'm doing the base first because I'm going to use that to size my gallery wire. I'm being really gentle so I don't lose my connection here. Okay. So it's a little wonky, like this is a little low, this is a little hot. Oops. Ooh, sorry. Knocked on my mouse. Okay, let me fix that. Sorry. It's a little wonky. This is a little low here. This is a little high here. So back into the parallel pliers they go, just to make sure it is really nice and flat. Much better. And a lot of people talk about forming that D to get your ring together. And I don't necessarily believe in forming that D, but yet I sort of am, but ever so slightly, because if you make a very severe D, then it's going to be too much tension on the joint. You're going to create a weak joint, and when you go to make it round. All right, so now I'm checking for gaps, and I'm making sure that I don't see any light coming through there. And I want this so even, because this piece of wire is not, or sorry, this piece of sheet metal is not that thick. Again, I think it's only 24. So I don't want to do a ton of sanding on here. I just want to do a little bit. So that's why I'm working extra hard to make sure that it is lined up perfectly. Okay, let's go ahead and solder this. So now I'm just going to use a little bit of hard solder to start with. And I'm going to use paste. And I'll put a little bit on the bottom, a lot actually, on the bottom here. Do you see that? Because I'm going to ask it, I'm going to put it down, and I'm going to ask it to run all the way to the top. Literally, it will run from here to the top. Actually, you guys can't see that. See, from here to here. All right. Because we're heating from above, remember, solder follows heat, so it should, and because we're heating from above, idealistically, it should run all the way up. Come on. And that's what you get for being ideal. It didn't run. You can see it. Can you see it? I can see it. You can see the blob still in there. So I'm going to flip it over, help it out a little bit. Dear Lord. Now it doesn't want to do anything. Come on, there you go. It's getting awfully red. I don't like it. Solder didn't want to run, so I'm helping it. Okay. Come on. I'm helping it with the solder pick by pushing it along. Don't want to melt it either. Let's take a look. I'm not convinced that's completely soldered all the way to the top, but we're gonna find out. Let's quench that baby. Oops. A lot of it sort of sat there. Okay, so that's a product of, I don't know, bad heating on my part. Stick this in, start shaping it. I'm at the 6.5 right now. Because of that D, it won't move down. So I'm gonna try to round it out a little bit and see if I can get it to go down. There we go. Nice. Beautiful fit. And I guess it did solder, because after all that banging, if it's not soldered, that's a different deal. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it there. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm not going to pickle it, I'll pickle it after I start working on the other stuff, so we're not sitting around waiting for it. Too many tools, hold on, there we go. Okay. So then I'm going to take my gallery wire, I'm going to go ahead and trim one side nice and flat, so then I don't have to do it on both sides when it's in ring form, right? I'm just going to make it nice and flat. I don't know where it's going to end up. I'm making an assumption, but hopefully, we'll see. Hopefully it'll be perfect. And I'm just going to bend this around. like so. And again, I'm going to hold it really nice and tight. Push it down. There we are. And we'll mark it. And I'm going to mark it long. I'm marking it long, especially not just give myself margin, but so I can play with the design a little bit and see if I can make it look seamless, right? Because chances are you're not going to be able to match it up perfectly, more than likely. I know I got lucky a couple weeks ago when I was doing this, but I'm not going to test my luck. Nope, not doing it. So the next start from scrap. I've been trying to figure out what we're going to do with all these little offcuts of gallery wire. I don't know. I'm going to do the other one too while we're at it. Okay. Oops. I didn't file this side down like I did the other one. I've already forgotten. And notice how when I file, I always have my hands to the table or on something solid. And if I didn't already say this before, I'm putting the gallery wire around the base ring. Because of course, it's going to be bigger than putting it on the mandrel, right? So we're going to mark that. Right about there. Cut it long. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and anneal these pieces because it's a little springy and I want it to make it a little bit easier to work with. And I'm actually going to face, the tips down because I don't want to melt it. When I'm using gallery wire where I can face the tips down, I do, just to save myself a little bit of grief. Okie dokie. There we are. Okay, let's put this on and see. All right, this might just come together perfectly here. And now I'm starting to eyeball it a little bit. Oh, that took off nothing. Whoops. Okay. And I'm starting to look at my design to see where it's all going to end up. And I'm matching it up. Let's go in closer so you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm matching up that, there it is. So I'm matching up the pattern as much as I possibly can. Okay. So on this one, I'm off by maybe 0.5 millimeter. So I'm going to go ahead and make it a hair, as close as I can to make that match, and I'm going to stretch it out because it's so stinking close. You see? Is it off? It just a teeny weeny bit. I'm going to cut that a little bit more. Actually, we'll file it because we're going to have to file it anyway. Nice match. Okay. I'll go ahead and throw this in the pickle while we do the second one. So one would assume that the second one's going to work the same. Does it need to be larger to take account into the width of the band? Using it on a stepped ring mandrel, you don't have to. Okay, it should be perfect because this is the inner size of the ring. Okay. Whereas if you put it on a tapered, you do have to size up. Okay, so where are we with this one? Actually, I'm going to cut this one on both sides because I have a wonky cut on this one. So we're going to match that up on both sides. Okay, and there it is. And at this point, I'm not marking it because I can match it up by the pattern. So I know exactly how many points I'm taking it off. So you can see there. And there's my match. Woohoo! Teeny weeny bit more on the one side, but I'm going to file it. Okay, so I have a little bit of a burr right here, so I'm going to trim it off. Don't know why. Okay. Same here. All right, so there's my perfect fit. Okay, throw this in the pickle too. We'll throw the band into the pickle. I thought I'd put it on just to see, even though it's not for me. And we'll pull out the other one. Oh, that one's already done. Okay, so throw the band in, pull the two pieces out of the pickle and rinse it. And I'm just going to work the joints together. I'm making an assumption that it all fits, that I did my job properly. And same thing with the outside bands. We're just going to push it down to make it nice and even. Just like so. And then we're going to solder that closed. Oh, there you are. Okay, is that nice? There we go. All right, same thing here, a little bit of hard solder. I'm going to put it right at the top this time because I want to point the, and I'm going to put it on the inside because I don't want it to bleed onto my design. And I don't want to melt the little points, so I'm putting it on the top this time. Just like so. Let's zoom out a little bit. And I'm separating it because I don't want to melt one inadvertently. So heat the whole thing, heat that joint. Notice I'm doing this really gently. I'm not being terribly aggressive about it because I just don't want to melt it. All right, quench it. Throw it in the pickle. Grab the other piece out. Hold on. There you are. Copper tweezers. All right. Grab the other piece out. And there it is. Okay, so because I have a little bit of a seam here, can you see that? You can see that. I'm going to go ahead and sand that and make that really nice. Even though I'm putting a gallery wire on it, there is separation between the wires. And I'm not completely clear where we're going next with this. I'm supposed to put a stone on there. And yeah, I could cover it up, but why not get this done correctly? Okay. All right, so here, this seam, even though it's together nicely, can you guys see that? I mean, it is soldered all the way through, but there seems, because there was a little tiny bit of a bevel in the cut, you can see the seam. So a couple ways to manage this. I can sit here and sand it, but I feel like that sort of, because it's so thin, that would create a thin spot in my metal, and I'd rather not do that. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put some more solder on there and get it to bleed. Okay, so I'm just going to lay a little bit of solder right on top here. And I'm going to run solder. I'm going to basically smear solder over that seam just to get to fill, and then I'm going to sand it back. No. Okay, so I'm just going to heat it. I've got my solder pick here. There we go. Get it to flow and make sure that my joint is covered up. I know this is not necessarily the prettiest way to do this, but this is going to work for me just fine. Okay. Okay. Discussion regarding the band. You know what? After I said what I said earlier, I'm like, wait a second. Am I thinking about this right? I don't know why I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around this wide band thing today. But Char's comment on where? Facebook, Twitch? Where is she commenting, honey? Facebook. Char's comment on Facebook is correct. I have to think about this for a second. Again, I don't know why, but I'm having a hard time screwing my head around this today. Too many things on the brain today. So you're right. You do need to size up. You do need to size up for a wide band, depending on how wide you go. But give me a minute to think about this. Again, I'm trying to remember what it's supposed to be. I just can't think of it. It's just not clicking in my head today. I don't know why. Puppy on the brain, events on the brain, lots of things going on here. But I'm going to keep moving and making this, and I'm going to keep thinking about this, but I'm going to address it. I promise. Okay. So now I'm going to sand this again. And a little bit of bleed onto the edge here. So we're going to take that off. I can save my hands a little bit here too by putting it on a wood mandrel. There we go. See how clean it's coming? Really nice. And I'm just really sanding down the solder to make it nice and even. And notice I'm also working on the curve. Instead of just going flat over, I am working it so that I continue that curve and not create a flat spot. Okay. Almost there. Nice and pretty. Okay, so when you're making a band, you're right. When you're making a band, everybody's right, except for me today. Again, not clicking it. When you're making a band that's not wide like this, so you make it true to what it's supposed to be. The wider the band goes, the more you have to size up to accommodate, to get it down to so that you can get it comfortable. So it can be anywhere, again, depending on how wide the band is, from a half size to from a quarter size to a half size larger, depending on how wide you go. So yes, you should size up a little bit. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stretch this. So I'll show you guys how to stretch it too. and you know where my head failed on that one is the step mandrel had me thrown off, because I typically make everything on a tapered mandrel, and I wasn't thinking about this very well. So yes, to Shara's point on Facebook, this how much you go up, as I just said, how much you go up will depend on how wide your band is. So the wider the band, the more you go up. So that's really a little bit, it's a little tricky on that one. I don't have the true math on that, quite honestly, but there it is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and round this up a little bit better, true it up, and then I'm going to put my bands on. Oh, please fit. Oh, please fit. Oh, yes. Are you going to fit? Oh, is that's a perfect fit right there. All right. Okay, so it's a little wonky. I'm going to pull it off. I'll show you. So this band is not flat, meaning it's not flat to the surface. You're going to need to flatten that out somehow, gently, okay? So we'll go ahead, put it down, and gently flatten it out. I'm going to check out, okay, so here, there's a slight imperfection in the wire itself that I did not notice. So I'm going to flatten that just a little bit and make sure it's nice. Okay. We'll put this on. I'll put it on the mandrel here in a second. I'm going to see how this does. Just a little bit. Again, put it back on the mandrel. Let's see if we can get this around. And I'm pushing it down so it's nice and flush to the bottom. And you can solder this separately. So I can pull this off and solder this now, or I can do them together. And I think I'm going to opt to do them together because you guys know me. This is what I do. I prefer to do it in one-step soldering. Okay, so this is not really round. So I'm going to round it up. It'll make my life easier to get it on the band. Ontario. Hello, Ontario, apparently is in the house. I think a couple of our VEC instructors from Ontario. Okay, there we are. So I'm pushing it down to make sure it is nice and even. Now, let's see if I can find there is my joint there. You can barely see it. Makes me happy. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it because I think in the end, what's going to happen is I'm going to put a stone on it so it further disguises it. Although I think it's pretty darn perfect from what I can see. There we are. And, sort of funny, the joint happened to land on top of the joint, on the base joint. Okay. But the bottom, I'm going to line up all the joints is what I'm doing. I feel like I'm turning a clock. And I'm working on the mandrel so that I don't squish it. I don't want to distort my shape. Okay, so there's that joint. Where did the other one run off to? Okay, so let me see if I can get the other one. The other one, every time I turn it, wants to turn this one. So we turn one at a time. Try that again. Is that right? Oh, there it is. Maybe I don't care. I don't care. I don't care that much. Because I can't see it. So why am I trying to line it up? Except for, I'm going to line up the gallery wire joints and not the joint to the base because I can't see the base joint anyway. So who cares, right? Why are we driving ourselves crazy? Here we go. So that's where this is. We'll put this back on. Here we are. And we're going to put this on. Again, I'm looking to line up the gallery wire joint that I lost track of. There it is. Because I did a good job. Woohoo! I know. Pat myself on the back for that one. There it is. Okay. All right. Yay. Okay, so now I'm going to just gently push it down to the table to get it nice and even. Gently push that down to get it nice and even. And now that I flipped it over, I can see I have a little bit of wonky right there. You see that? Just a little tiny bit. So before I solder it, I'm going to put it right back on the mandrel. Did not see that earlier. And I'm going to shape it just to make sure that is good. And I'm being oh so gentle because it's not soldered down. I want that gallery wire to hug the base wire oh so well. Okay. The more work you do now, the less problems you have later. You know, I always feel like you should try to do it right up front. And if you mess it up, then you can fix it. But don't leave a mess, especially before you solder, because it's so hard to reverse solder. Okay, nice and even. And I can always sand those sides a little bit. So the question is, would it be beneficial if you line up all the joints so that if you need to size up or down later, that you can do it there, or would it create more of a headache? You know, I don't know. Let me think about that too. Because my attitude is, if you soldered all of it correctly and you did a good job, it's not going to matter, right? Because when you go to resize this, you're not going to resize this using hard solder to put it back together if you're cutting it. If you're stretching it, that's a completely different animal. But I'm assuming what you're talking about is about cutting it open so that you can take the size down. So we're not going to go back to hard solder at all. We're going to do this with easy, or sometimes even extra easy to resize. It really shouldn't matter. Okay, you know, it just occurred to me that one thing I forgot to do is, you know, these little points, I see some of them are still sitting up a little bit. So when I go to solder, I want all those points to be soldered down because I don't want anything to catch. So I'm going to go ahead and put it back and gently push them down. And they should push down nicely because they've been annealed. And it's gallery wire. Okay. I'm taking a lot of care with this ring. Okay. Okay, so we're going to solder this. It'll take a minute. And then I have to wrap my head around what I want to do with this stone. Such a pretty stone. I definitely don't want to mess it up and, you know, do a disservice onto this ring either, because I think it has turned out nicely. So now I'm going to grab some wire solder, because I think what I want to do is I want to pick solder this so I can be really specific and really direct about where the solder flows, okay? So it doesn't bleed everywhere. Let me go grab some really quickly here. So I'm going to take out a little wire solder and we'll go ahead and pick it. Right, hold on a second. Plug back in because I unplugged myself. Okay, there we are. Okay. A little bit of easy solder. Here's a tip for you. If you're using wire solder and you're going to pick it, then you want to go ahead and hammer some of it out. It'll keep it from rolling. You know, sort of like when you make granules, you want to go ahead and hammer out your wire so that it doesn't roll away from you. And I'm grabbing a bunch of solder because I don't want to stop. I probably have more than what I need, but that's better than not having enough, right? Okay. We'll go ahead and put some flux on here. Okay. Give it a good amount of heat. Make sure you heat on the inside of this too. It'll be much more helpful if you do. It's nice having it on this rotating surface because I can just go front and back like so. Let's go get some solder here. Okay, there it is on my pick. We'll heat it. And I'm going to hit it from the edge. And how do you know when to hit it? When your flux starts crystallizing, that's the indicator. There it is. Good. Good. Happening quite easily. I'm going to hit the bottom there too. Yay. Oh, I might not have enough solder. I'm going to draw it to the middle from the outside because I want that whole outside to be soldered nicely. But I'm going to heat towards the middle to draw it towards the little parts. And I'm going to do this side too. I might have to still go back and drop some more solder at those points, because I want to make sure that we don't have anything to snag onto. Okay, so you see how I'm doing that? I just touch it and it's grabbing it. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Pull it off, heat it. Let's turn it on its side and take a look. Okay, so the solder did not flow towards the middle. So I'm going to stop there and get myself a little bit more solder. So my solder is drawn a little bit smaller than your typical solder. So probably the reason why I need more solder than what looks like I'm using more solder than usual. Okay, so I'm going to cut a bunch of smaller pieces because I want to try to keep my solder contained. I don't want it to just bleed everywhere, right? Hands are a little shaky today. Not enough protein, not enough lunch. I'm gonna go get myself some more lunch after this. I'm laughing. Can't believe Andy just said what he said. That's all. You know, I'm going to put a little bit more flux on here because I can. Grab a little bit of solder. So this time I cut the solder a little bit smaller because I want to control how much is going down. On the inside of this, make sure it's nice and hot and not just the outside. Did you see that? I dropped it right in the middle of it. Oops. Wait, I'll come in a little closer so you can see what I'm doing here. Oh, stop. There we go. Okay. So much for control. Darn it. Better. Don't melt the flux bottle. Okay, so I dropped a piece of solder here that I don't want on top like that. So I'm gonna take it off. Come on. Come on. Okay. There it is. Cool. Did you see that? I put it right in between the joints or the points, and that's what pick soldering gets you. You can be a little bit more direct about it. Huh? There we go. There we go. Making me happy. I'm assuming you can see what's going on there. Again, heating, putting it right in between, and drawing it to the bottom. As I continue to heat in the middle, which is the base, and that helps draw the solder to where I want it to be. keeping my heat constant. That's making me pretty happy. A little bit more to go here. I think 2 more and then we'll be done. So I'm just checking to see how those joints or those points are doing. And I sort of want it to just go all over. And see, it got cold when I went to get the solder, so now I got to get everything hot again. If you're paying attention. Right there makes me extra happy. Ooh. There you are. Look good. Okay, so this is all cold again, so make sure it gets hot. 1 more to drop in here. There we go. Yeah. Yay! So I've got solder going all the way around. I've got solder at a lot of key points on those tips. Okay. We'll throw it in the pickle. We'll brass brush it, and then we'll be ready to do next week. We'll see. So, you know, I was also given discs. I don't know. I don't know if I really like the idea of using the discs. I think I might want to sort of do some sort of a prong on this with a really bold bezel on it. So a prong and a bezel. So we'll see. That will be next week, I think. Anyway, so what else is going on? It's raining here, and we are definitely getting into winter mode. I don't really think we're going to be seeing any more of that Indian summer. So bracing ourselves. As you can see, I've been wearing turtlenecks for about a week now. But the basement is always colder than any other place in the house, even though we're absolutely finished down here. But anyway, Saturday we've got our Meet the Puppy at 10:15, or at 9:30, come join us, and we're going to make bagels. I'm going to show everybody how to make bagels. I'm going to have fun with that. The recipe is online at theurbanbeater.com. If you want to go get your own ingredients, it's pretty simple. It's bread flour and some yeast, salt, that kind of thing. So it's pretty easy that you can get your own ingredients on that. But you can definitely join us. I've done a lot of experimenting. There's been a lot of bagel eating around this house. So a lot of experimenting in the last couple of months. I think I got it down, and we'll be sharing that with everybody. What else is coming up? Oh, hey, November is coming up. October's almost over. Jiminy crickets. So we're making jingle bells for the holidays. So that'll be right before Thanksgiving. We do have kits available. It's going to be, I'm going to do this live, but kits are available. So if you want to follow along, or if you want a kit, they're up there. Silver kits are also available if you want to make them in silver. And then we have one Zoom in November before I take off to Austria at the end of the month. We're going to make a pananular. It's, let's see, it's a scarf pin. It's a brooch. It's a brooch that goes back all the way back to the Renaissance, I want to say. The Greeks used it too. Okay, so this is a pananular. And there are also kits available. That is already up and ready on the urbanbeater.com. And there's going to be 2 stones on it. And I'll show you how to use it another day. But in any case, so here's our project. Let's clean it up and see what it looks like. So we got a dark spot here. I don't know what that's from. Oh, that'll come out. So we'll brush this up. We're not going to polish today because we're going to go ahead and put a stone on it, but I want you to see how this turned out. Actually, I really want Amy to see how this turned out because I know she's watching. Okay, so this is pretty tight. I'll come in a little bit tighter so you can really see this. Okay, so Give it a good churn and see if we can find that seam. Oh, there it is. You see it? You can barely see that. I'm magnified like 100 times on the screen, unless you're watching from a phone. Oh, and there's the other one. So not so easy. I truly believe that the pattern is continuous. The solder has not bled everywhere. You can't detect the solder, which is great. And the little points are soldered down, which makes me really happy that we were able to do that. And again, I chose to pick solder this so that I could control where the solder was going as opposed to using the paste solder. Okay, we're zooming out at a snail's pace here. There we go. So what's up next for this piece? Actually, not that much. So the ends here are a little bit rough. So I'm just going to take out some sandpaper. I'll sand it like so until it is nice and even, and I'm happy. Actually, there's one other thing I see here that I did not see earlier. I have a slight gap where there's no solder. Ever so slight. Can you see that? Teeny bit. So I'll go back and add a little bit of solder there just so that I have this nice, continuous, seamless joint for her, because again, I want this to be great. You can see my seam on the inside, but that's okay. It's going to take a little tiny bit of sanding and that will be gone. All right. So there it is. That's my story for today. Okay. If you're interested, we have this step ring mandrel. It is up for sale. It is limited quantity, but it is available up there for you. Okay, and we will be back on Monday for another start from scrap, and we'll finish up this ring next Wednesday before I take off out of town. All right, that's it. That's me in a nutshell for UFO Wednesday. Hey everybody, thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks for correcting me on the wide band thing. Oh yeah, I didn't mention, how am I going to make this a little bit bigger? We'll make it a little bit bigger before I go. I don't have a ring stretcher, so I'm going to put it on the tapered one and gently move it down with my mandrel. And you just tap down like so to get it a little bit, oops, a little bit bigger. See, it did tighten up. Push it the other way, flip it over, and continue to do that. I like to do it a little bit at a time, and then I'll anneal it and I'll do it some more until I get it to the size that I want it to be. Just remember, you really shouldn't be doing much more than 1/4 to 1/2 size when you're sizing anything up, because you're really asking for it to break. And depending how well you did with that joint, well, you might be asking for it. If you go too far. Yeah, so see, I've already gone down 1/8 of the size right there. That makes me happy. So anyway, all right, everybody, have a great rest of the week. I'll see you on Saturday. If not, I'll see you on Monday. By the way, the Zoom link is on the Q Talk Facebook page, and I'll put it on my own Facebook page here probably tonight. So remind everybody what we're doing. All right, have a great rest